Hey, hi everybody. Welcome to the last weekly recap of 2020. It's hard to believe. Um, but yeah, we have arrived. And so let's get right into it. So we ended this year, and really we ended this unit. We've been working on adding and subtracting rational numbers, and we transitioned this week to multiplying, dividing. And I told the students we saved the easiest for last. Okay, adding, subtracting typically tends to be a little more difficult, a little more challenging. Multiplying, dividing seems to be a little bit easier to comprehend and to solve. So what we did is we started off right with multiplying, and what we did is we used what students learned in elementary school. And we talked about before they learned to multiply, they learned addition and something called repeated addition. So if we look at this problem, which is 3 times 4, a way that we can think about this problem is this is 3 groups of 4. And so if we take what students learned in elementary school with repeated addition, it would look like this. We would have 3 groups of 4, or we would add 4 3 times. And so this would obviously give us an answer of 12. So we can see that when we multiply a positive times a positive, we can prove that we get a positive. So we use this prior knowledge to help us understand what happens when we throw a negative in there. So now, what happens if we are multiplying 3 times negative 4? How do we get our sign or our product in this case? Well, in this case, if again we go back to that repeated addition concept, we would say this is 3 groups of negative 4. So this would look like this. Negative 4 plus negative 4 plus negative 4, which would equal not a positive 12, but now and negative 12. And notice that students are also using their knowledge of adding integers that we've gone through in the last couple of weeks. So we're kind of coupling a couple of prior concepts that they have learned. And so for the most part, these first two are pretty straightforward, pretty simple. The last one is probably the most complicated. What happens when we have 2 negative numbers? And so we're multiplying negative 3 times a negative 4. How do we read this? Well, most of the time students will say, well, this would then be the negative 3 groups of negative 4. But as you can tell, that just doesn't sound right. So we talked about all of the different things that we call this symbol. Not only is this a negative sign, not only is it a minus sign, a subtraction sign, a takeaway sign, but we also this year called this the opposite. So we would read this as the opposite of 3 groups of negative 4. Well, remember, just a moment ago, we just did 3 groups of negative 4. Here's what 3 groups of negative 4 looks like. So the opposite of that would actually be the same as what we did above. And we would get a positive answer. So we saw that when we multiply a negative times a negative, we end up actually getting a positive. So what we did to summarize all this is we then drew some conclusions. What did we see? Well, we saw that when we had a positive times a positive, we got a positive. When we had a positive times a negative, we got a negative. And lastly, when we had a negative times a negative, we got a positive. So we summarized down a little even further, and we said, well, we noticed that when the signs were the same, so when we had 2 positives or 2 negatives, we always got a positive. And when the signs were different, we always get a negative. And so once we came to this conclusion, we then started talking about division. And we remembered, oh yeah, division is related to multiplication. And so what we did is we concluded that the rules are the exact same for division. So what works for multiplication also works for division. So if I have a positive divided by a positive, I'm going to get a positive. If I have a positive divided by a negative, or I can flip these two, by the way, I can have a negative and a positive, I'll still get a negative. As well as if I have a negative divided by a negative, I will still end up with a positive. And again, we can model this, but we focus more on, again, that prior knowledge of that repeated addition concept. So, short video today. I'm sure you're very disappointed in that. But that's it. So we're going to test on Monday. I told the students their last test of the year, which they got very excited about until they realized, oh yeah, that's the end of 2020. So it's the last test of 2020. But we will have plenty more tests after Christmas break. So we're going to test on Monday, and then that's it for the year. But remember, we do have school on Monday and Tuesday next week, so we will still do some activities on Tuesday. But with that being said, I want to wish everybody a great Christmas, and I hope that this break is a good one mentally and physically for everybody, and you can just have some solid family time at home, and we can come back rejuvenated in 2021. All right, Merry Christmas and Happy New Year, everybody. Bye.